Thank you. Chair Lady Jones is in a meeting with the speaker, so she's going to be running a little bit late. She'd asked me a few minutes ago to go ahead and kick off the meeting and ask the speakers to come forward and speak. And what we're going to do is ask you to limit your time to about 5 to 8 minutes. We're on a pretty tight schedule this morning. DOE is going to be in here in a little while to speak with us about 11:45, so we'll try to stay on schedule as close as we can. Welcome to the committee. Glad everybody can make it this morning. And I'm going to ask Mike if he would lead us on, open us up with a word of prayer.
Bow your heads, please. Heavenly Father, we just come to you, Lord, and just thank you for the beautiful day you've given us. Just thank you for everyone here, their help, and just guide this meeting and may it be pleasing unto you. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. First on our agenda to speak this morning and make a presentation is Don Cargill and Richard Moore for the Georgia Youth Science and Technology Center.
Debbie Day,
okay.
Our executive director, is here with us this morning. Don is sick. Left the Capitol about an hour ago. Thank goodness he didn't need to be around here after 3 o'clock. And Richard Moore actually got called yesterday and has, I think, had to go to Augusta. But Debbie is the director, and I'm proud to serve on the board of Georgia Youth Science and Technology Centers, and I have for a number of years served on the local board in Cartersville when we had a center there, and then it moved to Rome. And then back in, I guess, the late 80s, I became a member of the state faculty by STC.
Right.
So we appreciate yours and the members' consideration.
Okay. Thank you.
Does this work?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Hi, my name is Debbie Day, and Boyd had already introduced me, and I did prepare a notebook for you. One of the things we wanted to stress is how much we do with your legislative dollars. We are covering 77% of the state of Georgia with services in fiscal year 2007. And in the 53 poorest school systems, according to the free and reduced lunch rates, we cover 42 of those 53 areas, which is 80% of the state of Georgia. I think if you'll look at some of the things we've provided to you, we are a public-private partnership and have raised $18 million exclusive of state legislative money since our inception. Some of our strategic partners are listed in the beginning of the information that's provided to you. In addition, we have significant support from our school systems. You'll see in the packet, on the right side of your packet, a lot of letters from prominent school superintendents, curriculum directors, and assistant superintendents. We cover 117 county systems and 13 city school systems. So that's 130 of Georgia's 170 school systems that we do cover. In addition, there are also a lot of letters from our corporate sponsors: Atlanta Gas Light, Bell South, AT&T, Georgia Power, many industry leaders we have received quite a bit of corporate donations from. Further back in the section, you'll see the sources of income chart, which is this color chart right here, which shows that for almost every dollar you give us, we double that. We got an allocation last year of $689,000. We brought in $1.229 million in funds extraneous to those legislative dollars. So that's almost a 2-for-1 match. And then I've detailed that on the back of that particular graph. We also provide our services at a very low cost, $2.42 a person. That's in your strategic point bulletin. And at the GASIS conference in September 2006, Kathy Cox cited GYSTC as the #1 resource listed by Georgia teachers in improvement of science CRCT scores. We also are the lowest provider of professional learning unit courses at a per-cost basis of $18 per hour versus the $63 per PLU for the rest of the people that provide that. You'll also see we were asked by the Department of Education to look at every single school that we served last year, and I want to point to this graph that's in the back of your information, and it's the meet and do not meet statistic. We were told to take meet and exceed and lump those together, and in every grade level, 3 through 8, GYSTC improved CRCT scores in our member systems. And on the reverse side, we have the do not meet. We did not have, we improved that in the reverse. In other words, we did not have as many that fit in the do not meet category. And lastly, I'll draw your attention to our calendar at the very back. And it shows the richness of our courses. With our 13 centers across the state focused on underserved areas, we are truly providing services that no other entity can provide. The fact that we have statewide coverage and the fact that we can extend the school day hours with our summer camps. We had 33,000 students, parents, and teachers attend our family science nights last year. That significantly helped the No Child Left Behind legislation. We feel like we're providing a lot of performance for our $500,000 allocation, and we would ask that you keep us in the budget as the governor has put us in the budget, and consider increasing our appropriation. And I'd be glad to answer any questions.
What was the governor's recommendation?
$500,000.
And what did we appropriate last year?
$500,000. We've gone from $890,000 down.
What were you the year prior to that?
$689,203. Yes. Okay, I'll be glad to get you another one. I've got some extras. You have the do not meet or the meet? Okay, I will be glad to get you a do not meet. But these are specific to our schools. We only pull the data for our schools, and this data was given to us from DOE, and we extrapolated it from there. So I think we can clearly show that we're making an impact and that we're using your dollars very wisely. Does anyone?
Any other questions?
What are your dues? I'm sorry, I was late.
Oh, okay. Well, the dues are based, the school system dues are based on a per student or a per teacher amount, and they're very reasonable. It's decided upon by the school systems. And all of the superintendents of our member systems are also members of the local boards. So we have a lot of input into what the local systems want in terms of supplemental science and math education and what the emphasis needs to be.
Let Ed go ahead and ask one.
Mr. Chairman, appreciate you coming today. We I had a chance to look through your pack, and I did get the letter from our superintendent in Cobb Schools, Fred Sanderson.
Okay.
We deliberated quite a bit last year in this committee about your program and what mechanisms for funding would be the most appropriate mechanisms. It seems like you've got pretty strong support from the districts from around the state, and you've got some numbers to substantiate that. Would you be comfortable, as this committee had given an intention last year to, whereas your funding had been just under $700,000 the prior year, we cut that back to $500,000 with the expectation that this committee was going to consider allowing you to be, this budget year forward, be funded by the local school districts, to allow them through their own resources to be consumers of your program by funding the program through county resources rather than being funded as a line item at the state level. I think we had, as a committee, talked about that in considerable detail last year. Would you be comfortable if this committee were to kind of follow that course and say, we're going to let you be funded by the local school districts and not give you a line item appropriation?
I think that would be a tremendous disadvantage for the school children of the state of Georgia, and I'll tell you why. You can see how much we can do with this money if you give us an allocation. We can almost double it. And I think if we do that, first of all, a lot of our school systems look to the fact that we are DOE supported and approved, and if that is taken away from us, we may have difficulty maintaining school system memberships. Having said that, over 80% of our school systems have been members for over 10 years. So I think it's been a great partnership. We would just like for it to continue.
I think we, and Mr. Chairman, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think there was some discussion about whether we were to add funding to a science, general science grant that goes out to the districts, and they could use that same money. It would in essence be the same money, but the school districts would be directing that money to you through their process, almost as a consumer, rather than we appropriating it centrally. And I think that was a model the committee had considered. I just wanted to get your thought directly. If you felt like you could, given your support of the local systems, if you could still compete and do that, if you're directing your attention to the systems rather than to this committee.
Well, I do feel like that if that occurs, that our school systems will say we're already giving X, we're not going to give any more, so our funds will be cut even more so. We will not be able to provide the level of services that we currently have.
We need to try to move on a little bit. Bob?
That was similar to that was similar to my question, and I just wanted to know whether, in fact, the deficit that you had, not the deficit, but the funds, the $189,000 from the previous year, whether the corporate sector or any of the schools had made it up so that you actually had to cut services between 2 years ago and last year, and this one's, you're asking for the same thing, but has there been any increase in funding from the schools and or the corporate sector to make up for the $189,000 drop?
Well, we were fortunate enough to end the year in the black, so
Okay.
So that was good. I will say that what has happened is that with that $189,000 decrease, we primarily absorbed that at the state office. In fact, I'm the only full-time employee at the state office anymore. So we've really tried to hold that at the state office level. We have had to decrease somewhat what we give to the centers, about 10%. We took a 27% hit. The centers took a 10% hit.
Okay.
Amos?
I understand the problems you're facing, and if we go to zero, which was part of the discussion last year, that you would have difficulty getting corporate sponsors to match it. Did they look at it and say, okay, the state's got money in it, so we will help?
Yes,
And that's
definitely.
generally the perspective. You agree?
Yes, definitely. And I think the governor saw fit to put us in the budget this year. We were not in the budget last year and were able to get in the budget. So I think that's a ringing endorsement that he is willing to put us back in the budget. I think he's seen. And we've got letters. If you'll read some of these letters, they really speak to the heart of the matter. In Northeast Georgia, they have data that supports that not only are the test scores higher between the member and the non-member systems, but the economically disadvantaged child and the child from financially sound, a financially sound family are as high. So we definitely can show an impact, and I think for the funds allocated, and due to the fact that the science scores, are in need of dramatic improvement, the fact that you've got a program that we can show has improvement in that area is something I think is well worth the taxpayers' money.
Thank you.
Y'all, I hate to cut off discussion on this one. We got a lot of other folks needing to talk. We're early in budget talks right now, so we've got plenty of time to visit further.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Neil Shorthouse, Communities and Schools.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. It's good to be here and with you all. I first wanted to thank the committee and the Governor's Office and the Georgia Department of Education for the funds that you are providing to communities and schools. Last year, you provided $2,445,623, which enabled us to have expanded what we're doing. So we're very grateful to you all, certainly to Superintendent Cox, Chairman, Chief Deputy Stuart Bennett, and then the two frontline people that we work with, Dr. Bradford, Diane Bradford, and also Dr. Wanda Krill, who's day-to-day at the department over what we do. I'm going to give you or actually Christine will hand out a sheet that hits some of the highlights, but I just wanted to say that the money that you give us, we actually generate about $22 for each dollar that we get from you. So this is a public-private partnership with the state of Georgia and the local communities, and the level of generating money is pretty significant. At least it seems that way to us. We also want to say, in terms of serving the at-risk kids of the state, which we are focused on, those kids who, by the school's direction are probably somewhere in the dropout pipeline, whether they're in kindergarten or whether they're actually all the way up in high school. One of the issues is discipline, and we have, in the kids that school systems tell us to work with, we've cut those problems in half over the last year. Another major accomplishment, we think, is that of the children that we serve, about in the high school grades, about 92% of them are either graduated or still in high school. So the staying power of those kids we work with, and these are the kids who are most vulnerable to possibly dropping out. But it's not complicated, because when you think of what we do, which is basically try to enter into a personal relationship with these students through an array of community people as well as school system people, it works. On the graduation coach front, last year we had 8,600 seniors who were on our caseloads. These were kids who we thought that might drop out. Actually, the caseloads were total 37,000, but of those seniors who were on that caseload, 8,600 of them graduated. Again, these were kids who were in the tentative category that the school principals thought might not make it. And why did that happen? Well, we created about 2,300 partnerships and put 3,100 mentors to work with those kids. The Performance Learning Centers, which you are also funding, graduated last year 861 students to bring to 2014 the number of Performance Learning Center students who have graduated. These are kids who the schools selected for participation in the Performance Learning Centers because they knew they were going to drop out. And with that 2014, the local school systems are very pleased with that. And by graduate, I mean they earned a regular diploma from that are issued by the Department of Education. Looking at 08 this year, where we're going to be adding and have already added performance learning centers in Muskogee, Montgomery, and Candler counties, and then we'll be opening more local CIS organizations. These are the public-private partnerships at the local level which support the schools and those kids who are in some level of social or academic vulnerability. We have 395 high school graduation coaches. This is a program, of course, in cooperation with our leader in this, which is the Department of Education. 395 high school coaches, 425 middle school coaches, all of whom are on the payroll of the school system. And we have 280 community coaches who are on the payrolls of their local companies or affiliations that they have in the local community. And these are no cost to the state, volunteers who are working to try to strengthen the impact of the graduation coach program. Finally, I just wanted to say that we are looking forward to this year. We're grateful for the governor's recommendation, which is $2,070,623, which will enable us to do much of what we did last year, and which will include, as was the case last year, 3 performance learning centers. So that's the quick version of this. I know your time is very valuable, and as I mentioned, Christine can circulate a little fact sheet if you want to take a look at it, and I'll try to answer any questions that you ask.
Okay. Real quickly, a couple questions from the committee. Ms. Penny.
I just want to say thank you. I have a learning performance center in my district and it had the highest graduation rate of any of the schools in surrounding areas. And thank you for what you're doing.
Well,
making a difference.
Well, we're glad to be in partnership with those good-hearted folks in Nashville, Georgia.
Go ahead.
Just a quick question. I was looking at the FY 209, and I see that there's actually a net cut of $375,000, and I'm just wondering why you're deleting. We know we're going to delete the money for the 5 new ones, but why would you delete funds for the $200,000 from the $450 for last time, and then redirect $750K to 3 new ones?
The governor's office believes in the performance learning centers, as Representative Housen said, and so they want to add more of those, and so they are going to continue that. They feel that the responsibility for the maintenance of these programs should reside at the local level, and that the local boards of education should pick up any ongoing support for that. So that is the reason that they have given for the cut.
Right.
One last question, Representative Anderson.
And this is a political question.
I love political questions.
And that is, why did the agency only recommend $1.2 $7 million instead of the, you must have done something to get the governor to increase the agency's request.
The true answer to that is I really don't know. A guess would be that they may have talked with the governor's office, and the governor's office decided to add money, which would then not require the department to ask for additional money.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Neil.
You're welcome.
Very
Thank
much.
you, sir. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Next speaker, Ms. Ellen Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. I'm Ellen Williams, and I want to introduce Subi Green. She is with the Center for the Visually Impaired, and I am very proud to represent this organization. They do a phenomenal job. Subi herself is actually married to a gentleman who has low vision. They have a guide dog. She has lived it personally and has great experience. And we're here today to talk about a program called the Transition Program, and you can go ahead and hand that out to them, Subi. Just to give you a little introduction, while blind children and children with low vision are the most likely of kids with all disabilities to graduate from high school, they are the least likely to be employed after graduation. And that's largely in part because they tend to graduate with a certificate of attendance rather than an actual diploma. This program was developed by a lady who works for the center, who has been blind from birth, and she was recognized by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation as one of 10 people across the country and received a $100,000 grant to help support this program. And I think that speaks volumes about the quality of the program. So far, in the 2 years it's been operating, we've served 40 children. Of those, only one has not graduated with a diploma, and that child had such profound other disabilities that was the reason that child really wasn't capable of graduating with a diploma. So I'm going to turn it over to Subi to let her talk more about the specifics, but what we want to do is seek $500,000 in annualized funding to expand this to the rest of the state. We're supporting the program in Metro Atlanta, but we want to see it go statewide, and I think one thing you'll find with services for the blind is that they're very lacking once you get outside the Metro Atlanta area. So with that, I'll turn it over to Subi.
Thank you, Ellen, and thank you, all of you. When the Center for the Visually Impaired, which we called CVI, started the STARS program about 15 years ago, there were 7 students who were seniors. And out of those 7 students, 1 graduated with a diploma. The others all received a certificate of attendance. In this past year, in May 2007, there were 8 graduates, and Ellen already indicated the good news there. Out of those 8, 7 graduated with a diploma, and 1 was not on a diploma path. And why is it surprising? Well, all of these students are able to do work independently, whether it's going to college or going onto vocational school or taking a job. But in all of the disability groups, children who are blind are least likely to go on and do any of those things. And the CDC estimates that in the lifetime of each one of these individuals who's visually impaired, they will each receive more than $600,000 in government support, and we would like to stop that with the children in Georgia. They are able to do what they need to do to become independent and tax-paying individuals, but they may need an extra boost. And so in order to get this extra boost, we started a transition program called Springboard, and that started 2 years ago. And during this program, the kids learn self-advocacy skills. They gain the knowledge of their communities, the resources that are available, and the leaders in their communities, and they learn the appropriate social skills so that they can fit comfortably into a job, into a college, whatever they're going to do next in their life. What we're hoping to do with this funding is to take what has been so successful in Atlanta and take it throughout the state so that we can have 10 other Georgia cities and the children that live in those areas participate. We expect that 50 students would be able to participate in the first year, and we would hope to increase that. We, as an agency, are committed to providing the support that we've always provided to this program for the Atlanta part of it. What we're asking you for is only for the part to make it expand beyond Atlanta. Now, let me tell you a little bit why you ought to have faith in us to do this program. statistics show that a disabled student is twice as likely as a non-disabled peer to drop out of school, become a pregnant teen, or to abuse alcohol or drugs. Well, 100% of the STARS students, as you know now, completed high school last year. 50% of this number attend now a 4-year college. Now, that is compared to a national rate of 9% of all youth with disabilities and 40% of all students. So our blind students are beating out the record of the sighted students in attending 4-year colleges. In the last 15 years, not one STARS female student became pregnant. Fewer than 2% of our STARS students were suspended from school last year, compared to a national rate of 12.5% for visually impaired students. And approximately 50 out of our 160 students have become proficient in Braille. And statewide, only 125 of the 1,089 blind students are Braille readers. And Braille readers are 33% more likely to be employed, earn income, and less dependent on the government. We think this record is extraordinary, and we'd like to see this all over the state of Georgia. For $500,000, we can make that happen. Any questions?
Any questions from the committee? Okay.
The Public Service Commission has a fund for reading to the blind. It's sort of a obscure thing.
Absolutely.
But not very many people use this, and they will admit, they're not, they contracted out. And I wish we would look at the money in that fund and see if there's some way legally we can transfer that money to a place where more people can use it, and to the Department of Education or to the libraries. It's just, it's quite expensive to run. I can't remember the figures, but I think it's like $15,000-$20,000 a month to expenses on the fund. But in a year, that's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money.
I wish you would look, whoever's in charge of this would look at that fund and see if there's any way legally we can move it to another department where it can benefit more people.
Okay. Any other comments? Thank you, Ms. Green.
Thank you.
Jason Rooks with the Southern Alliance for Clean Energy, Mothers, and Others for Clean Air.
Good morning.
That's a mouthful. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Jason Rooks, and I'm here to talk today about school buses and trying to clean up the dirty diesel emissions from school buses. For several years, Mothers and Others and Southern Alliance for Clean Energy have been working with local boards of education, fleet managers, and specifically EPD on funding to retrofit school buses. There is various pots of money that have been used in the past. Over 1,000 school buses have been retrofitted to date in Georgia. And what has brought our attention and why I'm here today is there's money, federal dollars, sitting at EPD right now on an 80-20 match waiting to be used. And the difficulty has been the local systems coming up with that 20% match. And so what we're proposing and asking for is a state appropriation to assist in that retrofitting of the diesel school buses. There's $2 million at EPD, and that money comes from the federal government. And as many of you know, the metro area and some surrounding counties are in non-attainment, and that impacts the federal match for highway funds. Congress has done a little bit of an offset where they've set some money aside for the Federal Highway Administration through state DOTs to invest in reducing the air pollutants, hopefully getting areas out of non-attainment. So there's $2 million sitting at EPD specifically for school bus retrofit, and $3.3 million sitting at EPD for school buses and other diesel vehicles for retrofitting. The $2 million, and both of these are under an 80-20 match, the $2 million lapses December 2008, and the $3.3 December 2009. Going forward, Congress has appropriated the money without a match, and so and each state has to apply and vie for these funds. I think it is not only a worthwhile program, but clearly Georgia using the funds that's been appropriated will put us in a good place to apply for more funds and continuing the retrofitting program. I will get to you guys, and I have spoken to some different counties who are very interested in doing this, and we'll get you the letters of support from the fleet managers. I believe it's very important for the implementation of this to have the support of the folks on the ground at DeKalb County, Coweta County. These folks are waiting for the money. The fleet manager are excited about our effort to secure the funds. My last comment will be of the 1,000 buses that have been retrofitted, all of the Atlanta Public School System buses were retrofitted under an arrangement with EPD and a penalty of assessed to Georgia Pacific, which was a $3 million issue, and their whole fleet was retrofitted. And going forward, all new buses meet or exceed the air quality standards. So we're trying this. The technology gets an 85% reduction in the pollution, and so going forward, obviously, all new buses have this sort of technology, and over time that will occur. But as many of you know, school bus fleets last for several decades, and we're trying to retrofit and clean up the air for the children in the cabins as much as possible.
Representative Statsler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I see just an estimated number of $7,500 per retrofit per bus.
Yes.
And I recognize these are not for the newest buses. These are for buses that are not the oldest ones, but that have been in the fleet
Correct.
for a while. And I know you don't want to estimate turnover practices for buses, but
Right.
just based on some assumptions. If a bus is, how old are the buses that we're retrofitting, and how much longer will they stay in the fleets
Right.
after this would be done?
What most folks have done it to date is they start with the newest buses that have the old technology. So 2006, 2005, you clean up and retrofit those most recent buses, which will last the longest.
So buses as new as those bought in 2005, 2006
Do not
still have the old?
Yes. And so those are the first ones that are retrofitted, and that it will obviously extend the length of time, hopefully, of the cleanest air for the length of those fleets.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, hold on just a second.
Seems like you got a pretty good chunk for administration, because on a 20% match for the first part only comes to $400,000, and on the second one $660,000. And you want $825,000 one case and $500 the other. That alone would add up to some more buses.
Actually, I don't. If my numbers reflect that, it's inaccurate. All the money is for the direct retrofitting cost. There's $2 million at EPD now, so $500,000 for a total cost of $2.5 million will lead to 333 school buses being retrofit.
Well, my point is, you said an 80-20 match, which
Yes,
is
sir.
1/5 of the money would be provided by the state, and the fifth of 200,000 is, $2 million is 400,000.
Right. The total cost of $2.5 million on the 80-20 would be $2 million and $500,000 was the math I was using.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, we have. I'm sorry, Jay. Go ahead.
On the retrofitting, I'm assuming this is something that each local school system does within their maintenance facility. It's not something that the buses are sent somewhere to be
Correct.
retrofitted.
Yes, sir. Okay. And like I said, I will get the support letters from the fleet managers who will be doing the retrofitting, who's tested them, and their support for doing this. Thank you.
Okay. Next, we have Matt Arkin and Andrew Jeter, I'm not sure, K-12 Incorporated.
Good morning.
Good morning.
And thank you for the opportunity to come before you today. My name's Andy Jeter. I am the school director at Odyssey School, which is a state special charter school located in Noonan, Georgia. And we also, as part of Odyssey, include the Georgia Virtual Academy, which is a program of Odyssey that is managed by K-12. We're here today to discuss and ask for appropriate funding levels for state special charter schools with special regard to innovative programs like the Georgia Virtual Academy. As a state special charter school, we are a public school. We're a public school of choice. We're one of 4 currently operational state charter schools. We're the only one that begins in kindergarten. Odyssey School, the brick and mortar, runs grades K through 5. The Georgia Virtual Academy, which began this year, runs grades K through 8. We do receive state funding as we are considered our own school district. So we do receive LEA funding, but also many LEA responsibilities. Our funding on a per-child basis, if you look at where we're located, which is Noonan, Georgia, in Coweta County, is approximately 60% of the total funding on a per-child basis. Our students, to get down to it, our student attending Odyssey receives approximately 60% of the fund, or accounts for approximately 60% of the funds that they would if they went to a local traditional Coweta County public school. The reason for this is we do not receive local tax money, nor do we receive SPLOST funding. And unlike local school districts who may talk about a lack of funding, we have no practical mechanism to raise revenue through taxes. And our funding confines us. Our teachers are not on the state salary scale. I have one teacher with 14 years of experience with a master's degree and a gifted endorsement who's making 55% of the salary she would make in any other school system in the state, or at least any other metro system in the state. Our dry erase boards are actually plastic wall boards we bought at Walmart and put up. Our bulletin boards are insulation material. Our social studies text that we use in the 4-5 cluster date from 1993. We work primarily from donated notebooks, and we're housed in the shopping center. Things have improved for us some thanks to an appropriation last year for a state charter school facility grant. We were able to access some of that money and pay our facility needs for this year. Even with the obstacles we've had, we've still made adequate yearly progress all 3 years. And our charge as a charter school is to be innovative. One of the things we wanted to do in terms of being innovative was to open a virtual academy. And we did partner with K-12 to operate the Georgia Virtual Academy, which is the first virtual academy in the state of Georgia. And to talk a little bit more about GVA is Matt Arkin, who's the head of school at GVA.
Thank you, Andy. I'll try and be brief. Just to give you a little more information about Georgia Virtual Academy and kind of how our school operates. We are a full-time public virtual charter school. We provide a high-quality, individualized public education for all of our students. Students work at their own pace through the curriculum. Each student works with a learning coach at home, typically a parent. So we have extremely high levels of parental involvement, as high as any other public school out there. Each student also works with a certified Georgia teacher on a regular basis, working with a variety of one-to-one online teaching tools as well. We use an extremely high-quality curriculum developed by K-12. It's also used in 18 other virtual academies across the country in 18 other states with proven results of high academic performance. Current enrollment right now, this is our first year. We currently have 2,700 students enrolled in this school. Over 50% of these students are low income. 44% of these students are minority students as well. They're from around the state, rural, urban, suburban, from over 125 different school districts, including nearly every legislator's home districts. I believe for this group we have 22 from Representative Maxwell's district, for example. But due to our extremely low level of funding, the GVA students suffered compared to... Oh, I'm sorry. I pointed in the wrong direction.
But I got a heck of a lot of it because I had 6 emails overnight. Y'all do a good job of PR.
Well, we have very excited and enthusiastic parents is what we have. But, despite that, our students are suffering compared to both other Georgia public school students and students in other virtual schools across the country. I have a background in some school finance across the country, and from what I am aware of, Odyssey and GVA are it is the single lowest funded public school in the country on a per pupil basis. We can't afford to offer our students art, foreign language, music that students in other schools get. We don't have enough teachers to give them. Our ratios of students to teachers are extremely high. We can't provide a computer to every child, as students in other virtual academies in other states get. Despite all this, there is an overwhelming excitement and enthusiasm from parents. I'll just say a couple brief examples of some of the parents that have told me. One parent of a 5th grade gifted child had a student who'd been bored and uninterested for the past 2 years and was actually starting to struggle academically despite being gifted. Now they're in GVA, they're working 1 to 2 years ahead in their subjects, and they're finally excited and re-engaged. We have one 14-year-old 7th grader, formerly a special education student, failed 2 grades in the past. Right now, as a 14-year-old, still can barely read and write. A parent just told me last night that with GVA, the students finally thriving, excited to learn, now they have that one-to-one interaction both with the teacher and the parent. The distractions are gone, and they're really able to focus and take the initiative with the curriculum. We have autistic, ADHD students with physical disabilities, many others that finally have the opportunity to get the high-quality public education in this one-to-one environment in the home that it's just not available to them in a traditional brick-and-mortar public environment. So what we'd like to ask you, specifically in regards to the line item on state virtual charter school that's in the budget, is we'd just like you to give Odyssey and GVA full and fair funding for our students compared to other public school students in Georgia, both us and other state special charter schools that are out there as well. With that funding, we can give our students the high-quality public education they deserve. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Representative, I think you had a question.
How are virtual schools funded across the country on the average?
As far as level of funding?
Yes.
It's typically between $5,000 and $8,000, about on average, is what I would say.
All right. And what are some of the cost components you deal with?
Well, the single biggest component is teachers, certified teachers. That's definitely our single biggest line item. We spend upwards of 80% on direct instruction. We have very high technology expenses as well, both with the curriculum and technology. We also, all of our students, we provide a lot of course materials, textbooks, manipulative science experiments. Our parents always laugh after they enroll. They get about 8 boxes of big UPS boxes of materials on their doorstep at the beginning of the year.
I have a follow-up question, if I may. You said you had 2,700 students?
That's correct.
Why do you think that there's such a phenomenal growth in this sector, the virtual schools?
Well, I think there was a lot of pent-up demand, is what I would say. We didn't do a lot of marketing, and the parents really, word of mouth, found each other. I think there was this hunger for a different type of public education environment where students can meet their individualized one-to-one education needs, and I think we've been able to meet that demand. And I think there's still a lot of additional demand out there.
Okay, one last question. Sure. Sorry. Y'all told me to get loud. I was the only one being quiet around here, so I've changed stripes. Last question is, you mentioned the diversity of your students. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, so I mentioned we are a low-income school. Over 50% of our students are low income, about 44% minority. It's also diverse from the background. One common thought is that, our school is just entirely homeschoolers who've jumped over into the public school, which isn't the case. Right about 45% of our students are coming from a homeschool background. And typically what we see is going forward, that percentage actually drops. I'd anticipate we'll probably be around 20 to 25% former homeschoolers in the future, just because, as a public school, we have an extremely high level of requirements and accountability that we require both of ourselves and all of our parents. And so,
thank you.
Any other questions? Gentlemen, thank y'all.
Thank you very much.
Got one last speaker this morning, running just a little behind, Lynn Stanfield with Apple Incorporated.
Good morning, members of the committee. I'm Mike Holloman. I and Rufus Montgomery represent Apple in Georgia. I'd like to introduce Ms. Lynn Stanfield. She arose at 3:30 to fly into Atlanta this morning, so I know she'll be brief. As a former chairman of the Atlanta Board of Education, I can tell you that technology is changing the face of how education is provided. and Lynn is going to share some innovative ways that they have discovered to apply that technology. Thank you.
Thank you and good morning. I am honored to be with you this morning to discuss something that we are all very passionate about, and that is education and certainly improving student achievement. Thank you. So, as Mr. Holloman said, my name is Lynn Stanfield. I represent Strategic Affairs for the Southeastern United States for Apple Computer Incorporated. And Apple has been committed to education for over 30 years. In terms of our product design, from products as very simple as the small shuffle that you or I might use while we're jogging. Kindergarten teachers are using that to help teach students phonemic awareness, to help teach them reading in kindergarten classrooms. That also transcends into products like our iPhone or even the iPod Touch, which essentially turns the classroom into a classroom of one. One of the things that we have really led education with is these classrooms of one with our one-to-one notebook computing initiatives. And for the last 5 or 6 years, we've had great success in this area. We have led work with states such as the state of Maine, which has implemented notebook computing initiatives, or what we like to call digital school initiatives, in 7th through 9th grade, and that is something that is continuing to expand, where every student in that state at that grade level is receiving a notebook computer with digital content and very good teacher professional development. In the state of Texas, we've been one of a vendor of choice in terms of competitive grants that were provided to various school systems to implement these types of computing initiatives. In the state of North Carolina, we have worked with school systems to create entire wireless communities so that students who are from small rural agricultural school districts have access, and this helps bridge the digital divide. And in the state of Louisiana, last year we worked very closely with then Governor Kathleen Blanco to provide a notebook computer, a cart of notebook computers in 6th grade classrooms in every parish of the state. A tremendous amount of success, and I think one of the crown jewels, as Georgia is the crown jewel of the South, is Mabry Middle School, right here in Cobb County, just a little bit away. The principal, Dr. Tim Tyson, who was recognized as one of your highest performing principals in the state of Georgia, and who also keynoted the National Education Computing Conference when Atlanta hosted it last year, has a digital campus and is doing phenomenal things in changing the nature of teaching and learning for his students. What we'd like to talk to you about today, and what we'd like to ask this committee to do, is to embrace the digital school concept through a $1.5 million allocation to the Department of Education that would allow for students, for schools, to apply for competitive grants that would require a 100% local match, local cash or in-kind match, to develop these digital classrooms. These are important, and we've chosen Georgia to begin these conversations because there are very unique challenges in this state. And we know that students in Atlanta have very different needs from students in Young Harris. We know that students in Valdosta have very different needs from students in Alpharetta. But the one thing that we do know is that when these kids who are totally immersed in a digital lifestyle between their cell phones and their iPods and all of the other sights and sounds and digital technologies that they have, when they enter our classrooms, that's when we ask them to turn it off. This is an initiative that will allow them to have continuity in the classroom in terms of maintaining that digital lifestyle. And what all of the research shows, and you all have a very comprehensive package that even includes research on these one-to-one computing initiatives, is that when technology is immersed in the classroom, the only thing that goes down is the dropout rate. Student attendance goes up, parental involvement goes up, student academic achievement goes up because students are now more engaged in the classroom. Teachers enjoy teaching more. The community becomes more involved in education. So again, a small commitment from this committee taking leadership would provide many, many benefits to the students in the state of Georgia.
Questions from the committee?
I had a question. Did the Department of Education, I noticed they did not include that in their recommendation. Have you requested it of them yet?
We have actually had some conversations with senior officials at the Department of Education, and so we do know that if this committee took leadership, that would be very, very well received by the agency.
Yeah, that was 1.5
1.5. Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your time. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I turn the committee over to you.
All right. We're not too far off schedule, only about 10 minutes. I'm sorry I didn't get to hear most of the presenters. I was with the speaker, but I have met with a number of you privately. But I did want the committee to hear from you directly instead of having me convey your ideas and suggestions. We are on schedule now to meet with the Department of Education to discuss the amended budget, because I expect that we will vote it out next week. And so, who's here from the Department of Education? Okay. Stuart and Scott. Didn't get enough yesterday?
Oh, we've had all we can stand.
Of course, that was only Kathy. Now it's you. So we'll give you the same warm welcome.
Thank you, Representative Jones.
If you could start by just going over the items in the amended budget and why they're there, why they're not there, and what you recommend. Also, for those who came to present today, I don't want you to feel like you have to stay. I know you all have busy schedules, so the hearing portion is ended. If you want to stay, please do, but please don't feel like you need to.
I'll have Deputy Austin start and walk through the budget, and then I'm here to answer and give the questions that you need.
Scott, do you want to do it from the actual budget document so that we can follow?
51.
Yes, ma'am. He needs governor's vote. Okay. We have the tracking sheet. No. It does follow. Is this the tracking sheet? Yes. Yes. I mean, I like to work off the budget because we keep getting so many tracking sheets that then our notes aren't on the same tracking sheet. So if you have, the budget, why don't we go? And then when it gets to the Senate, they use different tracking sheets, and then we just think it's easier to keep it here. So page, I guess, 52 of the budget document. Yes, Madam Chair. And just for clarity, I've 51. Tracking document. It does follow the governor's program budget pretty well. I have both of them in the criminal system, so it gets distracted. Just looking at a different number, please let me know, and I'll just reference what you're looking at. All right.
Oh, that was turned on.
Turn it off. And if I need to turn this, please let me know. Otherwise, I'll just kind of talk. Okay, it's on now. Let me just put it over there a little bit, and then I'll be in front of this. Yes, and just to begin, I think it's important to establish the basis for our budget request. It's on your tracking sheet, not in the governor's. But just as a reminder to board members who may not recall or be as familiar with the budget process, we do submit a budget through the State Board of Education to the governor on September 1st. The instructions for that budget this year were for us to come up with a 2% reduction against certain programs, none of those programs being those that affect direct instruction. The total of that 2% was $6 million. And then we were also allowed in that same view to ask for redistribution, or actually that's for 09, I'm sorry, and we're talking supplemental. Supplemental, the instructions were for a flat budget. And so we were allowed to ask for growth items. Growth items are the traditional items that relate to the midterm adjustment, predicated primarily on student growth. So if we walk down, the first item is yes. Okay. The first item is in our central office, the program. It's a reduction of $300,000 to the teacher liability contract. That's based on an actual projection. There's no intent. and there's no intent there to reduce the services. That's a contract we manage, or that is managed with DOAS, and so the $300,000 reduction is what we anticipate to be the actual occurrence that allows us to remove the governor's office to remove the $300,000. The charter schools, this line, this $6.3 million is interesting. It is actually in reference to the Charter Academy, whom you just heard from a little earlier. The Charter Academy is part of Odyssey, which is a state special school. This particular line is referring to the QBE numbers that would have been reported through Odyssey in October. The $6.3 million is for the student populations based on the QBE lines where they would have self-reported, or where the central office would have reported them in.
Does this mean that you intend to fund Odyssey and so forth, and the virtual academy up to the level of the regular charter schools?
Well, this line, and we do need to analyze it a little bit. The governor's request here of 6.3, just under 6.4 million, is slightly. It appears to us to be slightly less than the full QBE funding, and we do need to analyze that. In fact, we believe that the piece that relates to the previous Charter Academy is still in QBE, and so we're clarifying that with OPB, but I would say it is very close to the full funding amount they would have gotten under QBE, but it does appear that there has been a slight reduction in some of the lines, and we will clarify the exact numbers for you.
Numbers don't correlate with the numbers that were given. You got 2265, they've got 2700. I don't know.
That was the number at the October, ending on the October FTE count, and that's the number that we have to go with. If they've enrolled more since then, that's not in our report.
And Representative, and I appreciate you pointing that out. Again, one of the things I need to clarify is whether that 2,700 included the brick and mortar Odyssey, and it may be there, but we will clarify that for you. The next line, equalization. This is the midterm adjustment to equalization, where we're appropriating funds for those systems that have raised their millage rate, and this is the way that we fill that gap that we talked about in previous years, where up until several years ago, a system that raised their millage would get benefit in the first year, but then in the second year they would lose benefit, and so this is allowing us to give full benefit in each of the years. And that's what the equalization adjustment primarily does. The Georgia Virtual School, this is the Department of Education's virtual school, is primarily high school at this point. This is what those of you who watched the presentation Superintendent Cox discussed. That it is a very good program. It's differentiated from the academy dramatically in that it's run through the Department of Education, but also our Georgia Virtual School, the DOE's Georgia Virtual School, is really intended to offer a class primarily. And there are some students that take additional classes, but it is not intended to be the full school day for students. So the Georgia Virtual Academy is a full day virtually primarily, whereas this is the Department of Education's virtual school, which has been around for a number of years. We primarily offer courses. The beginning of the program, at least under Superintendent Cox, was really a tremendous effort on making sure that every high school had at least 2 AP courses, and they have met that mark and exceeded. And again, I can bring the numbers in, but I think you probably saw the chart yesterday from Superintendent Cox that shows that the performance of the virtual charter school is above even the average performance of the students that are in the normal brick and mortar schools.
In regard to that, how are homeschooling children doing in the virtual school? Did we allow them?
Yes, Representative Amundsen. I don't know how they are tested. I will have to find that out for you. They have access to it. They do participate. I don't recall whether they actually take the test. The Virtual Charter Academy, of course, those students will, because that's a full day.
My understanding is we looked at the number of homeschool students, and we had fewer than 200 of them. We're actually academically having the same success rate as the other students, pretty good success rate. And actually, if a homeschool student is taking an end-of-course test, a test that requires an end-of-course test, we are administering those tests to them through our educational technology training centers. And academically, they seem to be right on par with the other students.
We heard the first presentation, and this says the numbers, and they say that they have, 45% of the children in homeschool. And you're saying
No, this is too different, Dr. Holmes. This is too. Yes, sir. This is the state virtual school. Yes, sir.
So the total, if you took 6 segments, the total amount would be 37.
Yes.
Which is more than the first time for a full day, not just segments.
Madam Chair, I actually need to get the analysis for you. I don't, at this point, I don't know the exact number, how that 6.4 million relates to per FTE, so I really would like to compare that. Okay, and we'll get that. Now, one thing I need to point out is that the FTE numbers that you see for the Georgia Virtual School, which is the DOE's virtual school, if you will, it is the funding reporting is different. The Georgia Virtual Academy, which was the earlier under charter schools and whom you heard from earlier, those numbers are reported through QBE in the normal QBE process. For the Georgia Virtual School, we have segments that are funded in this line. They are not reported through QBE. And I say that, one, so that you understand it, but secondly, I do need to point out that even this 5,000 was based on an estimate back when we were working with OPB. The enrollment for the virtual school for the spring semester has just ended, and it had not ended when this estimate was made. So we'll be coming to you, but it is clear that we'll have even more than the 5,000 students that are projected here. And so I do want to point that out. So the funding mechanism was uncertain and will continue to be, and this is something we've discussed about how we fund the virtual school. And, you know, what we do is we tell you how many state-funded FTEs we have, and then we have to have a mechanism to get those funds in. There's a little bit of slippage because of the fact that the enrollment is still open even after the budget has already been submitted. So.
And our enrollment figures are up significantly in the second semester this year, and we will be bringing those forward through the project process.
So we're just leaving it open-ended?
Almost.
Well, we would like to.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, what we need to do is communicate to you. We've spoken with OPB and the budget offices and mentioned that we anticipate the growth is going to be higher. And so that's what I'm telling you is once we finalize the number, we'll be bringing that in. It will be somewhere closer to 6,500 students is what we anticipate.
And the original growth was projected over 5 years when the bill was passed in 2005 and was supposed to get us to the 8,000 mark, and we're on track with that now. So that was.
Mm-hmm. The local 5 mil share, that is an adjustment. Here you're seeing more funds put in. Of course, that relates to the local 5 mil share under QBE, which is a reduction in the amount that the state funds for the overall QBE funding. In this case, what happened was the estimate for the value of the mills changed vis-a-vis the original beginning budget, and so we're having to put $579,000 in state funds to replace what we had anticipated would have been funded through the 5 mil share. Madam Chair, I will get that for you. I don't have it now. Do we know how many? Well, I would need to get you the list. It's $1 billion statewide. I can't tell you which system or systems at this point. We don't actually calculate this number, but we'll get it for you. The national board certification, again, this is an increase that's required based on the number of teachers that we anticipate finishing this 2-year program each year. It goes up. It has been going up more slowly due to the changes that we instituted the state for national board certification relating to teachers needing to teach in a needs improvement school.
That's a question. I may have misunderstood, maybe not, but I believe the Superintendent Cox said yesterday that research shows that being nationally board certified doesn't seem to improve the output of students that are passing it, staying at about the same percentage. Now, does that mean that sometime in the not too distant future that you're going to stop pushing teachers to become nationally board certified, and the increase that we give them for becoming nationally board certified?
Yeah.
I would think that recommendation would have to come from the governor on that. I don't think that it's Superintendent Cox's intention to stop that program. I think what we'd like to do is we're looking at the master teacher certification and the academic coach program that was put into law in 2006, and we're looking at kind of bringing those qualifications together. We view the master teacher certification as more Georgia specific, and we would look to still support the nationally board certified teachers, but we want to increase the pool of master teachers as well with a local certification. So we're working with the PSC and the governor's office to review those requirements. And I would look at those two programs kind of coming together in future years. I don't think the idea is, again, to not honor the fact that the nationally board certified teachers have attained that certification. We just think that the master teacher might be more germane to Georgia education standards.
The next program is non-quality basic education. That's on page 53. There are two recommendations for this program. The first is that one of the sub-programs referred to as high-performing principals be reduced by $330,000. Again, that is based on actuals. We've not had as many principals availing themselves of the funding, and so there's an opportunity to move those funds. And the recommendation here is to redirect these funds into the virtual school, and by that I mean the state virtual school, to support the student growth. I believe it's 3, and it would be, for 3 years? So there is a commitment, and we would really hope that continues, a commitment to continue to fund those principals that avail themselves of the program. But the funding requirement for 3 is $15,000 a year each, so it's $45,000. So we're clearly overfunded at closer to $400,000. So the $330,000 is to adjust for actuals. The next line item, number 2, is we're very pleased to see, and this is a one-time addition the governor's recommending for equipment and technology, and that would be for almost $41 million. Would be something that would really benefit the systems. Our understanding is that it's relatively broad. The use of it is relatively broad, as long as the expenditures are technology related. So, as you heard from one of the earlier speakers, I believe from Apple, talking about the 21st century classroom, that would be one of the kinds of things we would like to see. We did talk to the governor's office about science equipment that we think would be very useful, and the technology there would be, we understand, supported. So that would obviously be a very favorable addition for this supplemental budget. I think would be very useful in assisting the systems with their technology needs. Pupil transportation, the next line, the recommendation is for a $25 million increase, and that would come in addition to the regular funding formula for transportation. There is a nuance here which makes it somewhat different from the normal transportation formula in that this is targeted for buses. The governor's recommendation is to make sure that each system would receive at least one bus, and that the balance would then go on a pro rata basis based on the normal formula that we use to allocate buses. It's very similar to what the General Assembly and Governor approved recently, where we used $50 million in bonds, just under $50 million in bonds to replace buses. And of course, we do really appreciate the funding, because the primary concern as the transportation formula gets underfunded is that systems begin to slow their purchase of buses, and the average age of the bus gets longer and longer. So it's a safety issue, and so we really do appreciate the addition.
And fuel costs have cut into it so significantly too in the last 2 budget cycles that it's school systems' purchase of new buses, they've had to reevaluate that, and many of them have had to forego that. So this will be very helpful.
Brief question. One of the earlier speakers referred to the need to retrofit for environmental purposes those buses. I assume these already meet the quality standards that the new ones would be retrofitted to meet.
New buses.
Okay.
And so they're talking about retrofitting. In fact, a lot of systems are already. I believe it's 2% requirement now for the clean fuel. Now, just as a comment, it's not huge, but retrofitting is one expense, but the biofuel is one of the issues that we have, and we'll have to make adjustments in the formula for it, is that the filters apparently are somewhat expensive. There's an ongoing cost there for additional filters and some additional maintenance and training that needs to go. But overall, the benefit to the environment is
I asked that because he made the comment that the buses from 205 and 206 would be retrofitted first, which made me think, well, if they're that recent and they need to be retrofitted, why that 207, you mean the standards or the buses themselves that are that you purchased from have already done that, but they didn't do it in 206?
They did not do it in 206.
Okay, thank you. I didn't know what the cutoff was. Thank you.
And retrofitting the youngest buses because okay.
Thank you. I have one question. As far as this retrofitting, I had a question earlier about it and asked it. What kind of fuel economy is lost when you retrofit these buses? It seems like everything I've always heard.
Well, and I'm not the expert. I will get some more information for you. It is my understanding. Of course, it depends on what kind of biofuel you're talking about, but it is actually not quite. The mileage is not as high as standard diesel.
Right.
And so there is a cost there because we price it per gallon, yet the miles per gallon is slightly less.
Right. Okay. That's what I thought. And I appreciate that.
In your comments just a second ago, you were talking about biofuels and extra maintenance and filters. Are you talking about for new buses or the ones that are retrofitted?
That would be for both. A bus that utilizes those fuels we understand requires additional it requires replacement of filters more often. That's the primary change, and some training in terms of how those for the retrofitted buses, how those filters need to be put in.
I would question the advice that you've been given there.
Okay. Again, I'm not the expert.
We've been doing a lot of research on biofuels lately, and on diesel, you should be the same as far as mileage and for maintenance. Now, on gasoline buses, the few that are still out there, I would agree that you're going to have some problems, especially on the retrofits. But and I may be completely wrong and off base, but you shouldn't see increased expenses for using a B2 or a B20 biodiesel. Just a comment. Thank you.
Gentlemen, when we purchase these buses, it's if my math looks right, my back of the napkin math. this is looking like about a $45,000 expenditure per bus. Are we buying? Does that buy an entire bus?
No,
That's just
actually,
fraction of the
a
cost?
bus is a bus, even a standard bus, that is with no special ed features, is going to cost north of $50,000. It's probably $52,000 now.
So this is partial funding that would be matched by a local portion, or is this?
Some portion would need to be matched, and that was the case with the bonds. But frankly, when you're putting $45,000 to $48,000 into a $50,000 investment, the school systems will pick that up.
Sure.
Where we have had some issues are school buses that require any type of specialization, either for special needs populations or if, I don't want to say off-road, but if there are driving conditions that require different
dirt roads
pieces and equipment, safety equipment is sometimes different, and those are local decisions, and they are all most of them purchased off fairly standardized lists, but it's like any other car, you add options and you add some costs.
The bus costs have gone up considerably over the years, and then most of them are north of $60,000 now. The state percentage toward the transportation costs for the local systems has really decreased over the last few years for various reasons. Obviously, the cost of the bus is fuel costs, and then the amounts in the budget. It's now around 29-30%. And just a few years ago, it was probably over 50%. So we have to be aware of that too. And then just my reaction as from a school system point of view would be that if you're also talking about now having to fund refitting these buses for environmental purposes, that's a cost on top. And so there's a lot of pressure right now on the system in terms of transportation and those costs.
The next program is QBE, and this is really our biggest budget element. It relates to the student growth directly, and so the adjustment of $105 million is the recommendation. Now that actually, interestingly, is a 1.09% growth. Last year the growth was around 2.5%. Our original estimate was somewhere between 2 and 2.5%. And so the student growth has slowed considerably. It's still growing, just over 1%, but that's about half of what we had anticipated. So we're looking at the various reasons. What we hear just anecdotally is a lot of it has to do with the building slowdown and just the cascading effects of what's going on with the mortgage and housing industry. We still do have some systems that are growing quickly. So not everybody is down, but even the high growth systems are growing slightly less quickly. The SED, this is actually a change slightly different from just an adjustment for growth. This is a reflection of recognition of state funding for state positions in a program that does receive some federal support. Last year, when the General Assembly established the raises for state employees, the SED employees also received those increases. However, the funding mechanism was changed, and so rather than paying for those increases for state employees with state dollars, the authorization was to pay for it with federal dollars. We went to the federal government and told them, frankly, that this is what we needed to do. Of course, they wouldn't give us a specific answer except to say that it should not. We don't want it to impact the program performance. And so, in discussions with the governor's office, he is recommending further to our recommendation that we put state funds in to pay for the raises for the state employees that are in the SED program and not utilize the federal funds, which had not been planned prior to that. And so this is really an adjustment, and I want to be clear, it's not growth, but it is an adjustment.
Have the federal funds declined from last year to this year? And is that the reason for that?
Or? So actually, the funds are part of IDEA, and there is a comprehensive plan that is submitted for community discussion for 60 days, and it is turned into Washington. SED is one of the recipients of some of that funding. There are other programs. In that original budget, it was never predicated, or it was never submitted that we would be paying for state raises, which we didn't know about at the time that we had that budget approved by Washington. And so when the appropriation was approved last year saying that, yes, you will get raises, but you'll use federal funds, it forced us to have to go back to Washington to say we need to amend the federal plan. So in that sense, it's a change. It will impact the school. It would impact the school systems because we had to take it from other special ed programs where we had not planned to do so at a fairly late date in the year.
Cool.
That's correct. Correct. It was a very late change, which was not.
Because I thought you said you used it, and then you had to pay it back.
Well, it's for this year. So what we'll need to do is we're going to have to reverse out some of the expenses, and what those programs have had to do, because we dialogued with the governor's office first. Once he suggested that he would be willing to support the recommendation to replace the federal with state as we had originally planned.
How much money is involved in this? The dollar amount? This is the dollar amount here.
This only represents the dollar amount of the change. The SED program. Let me see if it's on the front. I think you have it in your document under SED. Severely emotionally disturbed is $307 million. And a majority of that is actually state funding. And this is the issue where we have positions that are state positions, primarily state funded, where the federal government, the federal program managers have allowed some supplementing. It was never expected that supplementing would mean that the federal programs, IDEA, would start supplementing state-mandated raises for state employees. And Madam Chair, the last program is testing. That's a $780,000 addition. That is predicated on student growth. It's for ELL. It's for our English language learners. There is a requirement that we have a test for them. We used to use the lab, and many of you may recall the discussions we've had about that. One of the sources of funding for that, in this case totally separate from IDEA, was federal funding. The federal funding was cut in half, and so we knew that was a possibility, and we spoke with the governor's office and discussed with them the fact that our consolidated admin funds had declined from $12 million down to $8 million, and then this year $6 million. And so given the reductions, we are asking that the state put more funding in for that particular test. Correct. Correct.
Any other questions?
Just one. It's not in. How do we stand on state issues? That was a big question last year, being underfunded.
Oh, sir, you mean the residential treatment facilities? Well, firstly, they are receiving the QBE funding because they are reporting in. There was some forward funding that we dealt with last year, which we all agreed to and did. In addition to that, last year there was a $1.4 million grant. This year, the grant amount is $4 million, and that grant is intended to cover costs above and beyond the QBE numbers. So, firstly, QBE is now reported. It's being sent down through the central offices. Secondly, the $4 million grant, the board has created the rule as required by law to allow the process by which these residential treatment facilities will request additional funds, reasonable above and beyond.
We'll be dispersing those funds through the rest of the spring. We have worked individually with 36 school systems to create a memorandum of agreement and in essence, a contract between the residential treatment center and that local school system. They're all unique, but the funding has been flowing to all of these residential treatment centers now. We added 6 additional treatment centers this year that were identified over the summer. It was thought that they were part of the juvenile justice system, but as juvenile justice began to look at them, they really qualified under 618. So we added those this summer and forward funded after the first FTE count to get those going.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Questions? I did want to open it up. So how much do you have any comments on the amended and suggestions, anything you like or don't like? Are you all okay?
We could certainly see some uses for some of the money that's in the amended to take care of some things in the 09. I know that's a little bit complicated, but that doesn't seem to be appropriate now. Yes, ma'am. The computer money, which hasn't been there for several years now, used to be a regular expenditure out of the lottery. And while we're glad to see it, we sure would like to see it as some sort of regular K-12. Be good to see K-12 get some money back out of the lottery again. So I guess that'd be nice. And then you could take that same $25 million and maybe plug another hole or two in the things like the austerity cuts or whatever.
Well, I don't know if that would be regular money, but yeah. Thank you. Well, nothing else.
Thank you.
Thanks for asking.
It's 09. They could bond those buses. Hey.
I would shove you off. 168
Thank you.
Going well.
Talk to that kid smarter than I am.